For all that celebrations are magnificent, at the heart of the pageantry is a simple message: service.
When Camilla's daughter insulted Princess Anne, no one could have predicted what Prince William would do next. Buckingham Palace has always been the stage where tradition collides with tension. But sometimes, family drama spills out in ways no royal protocol can cover. What began as a simple public event soon turned into the kind of scandal the royal family fears most: an embarrassing conflict involving one of their own. The spark came from Laura Lopes, Camilla's daughter, whose sharp remark aimed at Princess Anne cut deeper than anyone expected. Laura Lopes has always been kept on the margins of royal life. She is not styled as a princess, nor does she live under the same spotlight as William, Kate, or Anne. Instead, she has remained largely a private citizen, an art curator, and a mother of three. Yet, because of her mother's marriage to King Charles, she cannot fully escape the monarchy's orbit. Her children were even seen playing notable roles at Charles's coronation. This connection means that whenever Laura steps into royal spaces, her words carry a weight she may not intend. And at this particular gathering at Windsor Castle, marking one of Princess Anne's many milestones, her words caused a storm. Princess Anne, admired for her relentless work ethic, had just completed her 20,000th engagement, a staggering achievement that proved why she is often called the hardest-working royal. With more than 300 charities under her patronage and more events carried out than any other royal, Anne's reputation speaks for itself. The reception brought together close family members, senior royals, and a handful of invited guests. It was meant to honor Anne's decades of service, her tireless dedication to save the children, and her countless international visits. Prince William attended in support of his aunt, someone he has always respected deeply. For William, Anne represents duty in its purest form. As a child, he admired her discipline in equestrian competitions, and as an adult, he often leaned on her example when facing his own growing responsibilities. On that day, he expected nothing but admiration for her achievements. Instead, he was blindsided. Laura, invited through her mother's influence, stood among a small group when she made her remark. She casually suggested that Anne's traditional approach to duty was outdated in modern Britain, and that younger royals like William and Kate had brought a fresher energy. Though delivered lightly, her words stung. For anyone else, the comment might have been dismissed, but Anne is no ordinary royal. She has given her life to service, never chasing fashion, popularity, or applause. To undermine that, even indirectly and in public, was to strike at the very foundation of her identity. Guests froze in discomfort. Some avoided eye contact, others prayed the moment would pass. But William heard every word, and his reaction was instant, though trained to remain calm and diffuse tension. Beneath William's composure lies a fierce loyalty to those he loves, and Anne has always been one of his pillars. His clenched fists, the sharpness in his gaze, and the way he stepped closer to Laura made it clear this was not something he would let slide. Anne herself, standing within earshot, kept her composure. Her lips tightened slightly, her posture stiffened, but she did not respond. She has endured criticism all her life, from being overlooked in favor of her brothers to having her choices scrutinized. But hearing it within the family circle in such a public setting was another wound entirely. For William, the insult was unacceptable. Anne had defended the crown through storms harsher than anything Laura had faced. To let this pass in silence felt impossible. Yet, he also knew the dangers of a public confrontation. One wrong move could dominate headlines and fuel endless speculation. Still, his anger radiated. Conversations faltered, glasses of champagne sat untouched, and all eyes nervously flicked between William and Laura. The silence after her words was louder than any outburst. Anne, pragmatic as ever, tried to steer the evening forward, attention by recalling stories from her early charity work and thanking those who had supported her, but the tension remained thick. William lingered nearby, protective instincts sharp, unwilling to let the insult fade away. That night at Windsor Castle, William's quiet fury became its own story, proof that fractures beneath the royal surface remained far from healed. And this was only the beginning. The next morning, William requested a private audience with Anne. He had spent the night replaying the moment, his anger sharpening with each thought. Though not one to seek confrontation, his loyalty often drives him to act when his loved ones are hurt. Anne was not surprised. She knew her nephew well enough to expect he wouldn't let the matter slide. When they met in Anne's private sitting room at Gatcombe Park, she listened calmly as William's frustration spilled out in firm, clipped sentences. He questioned why Laura, whose place in royal life exists only because of her mother's marriage, would dare criticize someone who has worked harder than nearly anyone else in the monarchy. Anne, true to character, dismissed it lightly. "You get used to it, William. People always think they know what this job should be." To her, Laura's remark was just another in a long line of dismissals she has endured. But William wasn't ready to let it go. William's respect for his aunt was far too great to let what he saw as blatant disrespect slide. He pressed Anne, insisting the family could not ignore such behaviors, especially when it came from within their own circle. He reminded her of the countless sacrifices she had made, the missed holidays, the exhausting tours abroad, the endless days filled with back-to-back engagements. These rarely made headlines, but over time they had built the monarchy's reputation. To him, letting Laura's words pass unchallenged felt like dishonoring all of it, and appreciated her nephew's loyalty, but urged restraint. Ago learned that reacting only gave more power to careless comments. William, however, saw it differently. He had grown up in a world where every whisper could become tomorrow's front page. His fear was clear. If Laura's remark reached wider circles, the press would spin it as a generational divide within the monarchy, a story the media would eagerly devour. For him, silence was not strength, but risk. Meanwhile, word of the tense exchange had already reached Queen Camilla. Laura had always been shielded from public criticism precisely because she was not a working royal. Camilla had tried to keep Laura and her brother, Tom Parker Bowles, out of palace politics, believing they deserved to live free from the relentless scrutiny William and Harry had endured since birth. Still, Camilla knew her daughter could sometimes be outspoken to her own detriment. When she learned of William's visible anger, Camilla bristled. She saw it as an overreaction, one that could inflame tensions rather than ease them. This left Charles in an impossible position. As king, his duty was to hold the family together. But as a husband and father, he understood Camilla's protective instincts. He had worked tirelessly to fold his second family into royal life, ensuring Laura and Tom were accepted, even if they never carried titles. Now, one careless comment threatened to unravel that fragile balance. For William, however, this was not just about Laura. It was about respect for Anne and, by extension, respect for the crown. His conversation with his aunt ended with her urging him to drop the matter, but William couldn't. He believed acknowledgement was necessary, if not from Laura herself, then, at least from Camilla. That determination quietly set the stage for a deeper rift. William began to distance himself from Camilla in subtle ways, avoiding joint appearances where possible, keeping conversations brief. Palace insiders noticed the chill. For years, William had kept his feelings toward his stepmother mostly private, polite, but cautious. This incident, however, added a new frost that even seasoned courtiers couldn't ignore. On the outside, everything appeared fine. But inside the palace, William stayed angry. Anne stayed calm. Camilla stayed guarded, and the mood of the royal family shifted. Informal gatherings became more careful, with courtiers subtly adjusting seating arrangements to ensure William and Laura were not placed too close together. Charles tried to smooth things over, reminding his son that Laura had not spoken maliciously. But William remained firm. Intent mattered less than impact. And the impact on Anne was undeniable. The episode highlighted just how fragile the relationships within the family really were. Once again, Charles found himself tested trying to keep unity in a family long defined by division. But this was only the beginning. If Anne had handled the matter on her own, it might have faded quietly. William, however, refused to let it go, and soon the tension began to spread. The first clear sign came at a charity gala at Clarence House, filled with familiar faces from the worlds of art and culture. Laura Lopes was there, confident as ever. As an experienced art curator, she was at ease, well-dressed, engaging, and animated when speaking about her work. But when William walked in with Catherine, the mood shifted instantly. Guests felt it. Something was off. Though most didn't know why, they could sense the tension. Laura, seemingly unbothered, chatted about an upcoming exhibition, laughed with family friends, and posed for photographs. William, however, kept his distance. His expression lacked the warmth he usually displayed at public events. Catherine, ever perceptive, tried to smooth the atmosphere by making polite conversation with Camilla, but even her calm grace couldn't mask the strain. Eventually, William and Laura crossed paths. What should have been a routine exchange became a sharp reminder of the divide. According to those close enough to hear, William gave a stiff greeting. Laura, with a hint of defiance, remarked that she hoped everyone could keep perspective about a passing comment. To her, the issue had been blown out of proportion, but to William, her refusal to acknowledge the hurt only confirmed her lack of respect. Camilla noticed the exchange immediately. Protective, she stepped in, guiding Laura away with a firm arm and a smile that barely concealed her irritation. To her, the situation was deeply unfair. Laura had never chosen life under the royal spotlight, yet she was now being judged by the same standards. She whispered to Laura to let it go, but her daughter's pride was already wounded. Anne, meanwhile, maintained her composure as always. She spent much of the evening speaking with donors and encouraging younger royals. Yet Catherine later admitted to friends that Anne's shoulders seemed heavier than usual, as if she carried not only the monarchy's burdens, but also the weight of being at the center of unwanted discord. In the days that followed, matters grew even more complicated. Palace staff, often the quiet observers of family dynamics, began to whisper. William's disapproval, Laura's comment, Camilla's defense, it all became talk in the corridors. While the public remained unaware, the monarchy's private world buzzed with speculation. The very narrative William had feared, a careless remark spiraling into proof of division, was creeping closer. Charles, sensing the danger, decided to intervene. He called for a private family meeting at Buckingham Palace. He wanted clarity before matters spiraled beyond his control. In a small drawing room, far from the grandeur of the state chambers, the group gathered in uneasy silence. William and Camilla and Laura sat together, joined quietly by Catherine, who, as always, served as a calm presence. Catherine's steadying presence lingered in the background as Charles began to speak. His words were measured, reminding everyone that unity had always been the monarchy's greatest shield. He stressed the crown's delicate place in modern Britain, how even private slights, if they slipped into public view, could shake public confidence. His tone was calm, but his eyes betrayed deep concern. William was the first to respond. With conviction, he declared that Laura's remark about Anne had crossed a line. He spoke passionately of his aunt's decades of selfless service and how deeply he admired her. Everyone in the room knew his words carried weight, for Anne had always been one of his guiding examples. Laura, however, did not retreat. She insisted she had not meant to cause offense, that her words had been casual, not intended as a personal attack. To her, it was baffling that such a small remark could cause so much disruption, and intervened, her voice steady. She acknowledged the sting, but urged everyone not to let the issue grow further. Her resilience was evident, as it had been throughout her life. Yet even her attempt at calm could not erase the charged atmosphere. Camilla then spoke, her tone edged with frustration. She reminded William that her children had deliberately avoided public roles, precisely to escape this kind of scrutiny. Dragging Laura into palace disputes, she argued, was unfair, especially when Laura had her own independent career. But William pushed back. Once remarks were made within the family circle, he argued, they carried weight regardless of titles or roles. The meeting ended without resolution. Charles urged reconciliation, but no agreement could be reached. Anne left quietly, returning to her duties with the unshakable steadiness that defined her. William departed, dissatisfied, feeling his point had been dismissed. Laura and Camilla, left protective and defensive, convinced Laura had been unfairly singled out. What lingered afterward was a subtle but real divide. Outwardly, the public saw smiles and ceremony, but behind palace walls, trust had frayed. For William, the conflict had become a question of principle. For Camilla and Laura, it was about defending family dignity. For Anne, it was yet another burden to carry silently as she pressed on with her work. Seeds of conflict had been planted, invisible to the world outside. but already taking root inside the monarchy. As weeks passed, the disagreement did not fade it, hardened into an unspoken barrier at family gatherings. On the surface, everything looked polished. Cameras captured smiles, handshakes, and formal speeches. But beneath it all, tension remained, and everyone inside the household could feel it. William still believed Anne had been treated unfairly. His admiration for her went far beyond family loyalty. To him, she was the model of duty. Unlike others who sometimes sought recognition, Anne worked not for applause, but because it was expected and because she believed in it. To dismiss that, with a thoughtless remark, was, in William's eyes, an insult to everything the monarchy was meant to stand for. Anne, in her way, tried to move forward without fuss. She carried on with engagements, met charities, and spent long hours with her horses at Gatcombe Park. But those who knew her best noticed subtle signs, a firmer set to her jaw. Shorter tones in private conversations, a habit of leaving gatherings earlier than usual. They were small, but telling. The remark had left a mark deeper than she admitted. Meanwhile, Laura remained steadfast. She felt misunderstood and unfairly judged. For years, she had lived her life away from the royal machine, only to be pulled into its politics against her will. At cultural events and art exhibitions, whispers about her tension with William began to circulate. Friends asked quiet questions. She brushed them off, but the embarrassment stung. She had built her career on art, not family drama, and resented the shadow it cast. Camilla, increasingly protective, grew more defensive of her daughter. She had worked hard as queen consort to balance her new role while staying loyal to her. Children, seeing Laura drawn into royal disputes, only fueled her instinct to shield her. She often confided in Charles, reminding him that neither Laura nor Tom had ever asked to be involved in palace politics. Charles listened patiently, yet he also understood William's perspective. He knew how much Anne meant to his son and why William felt compelled to defend her. Once again, Charles found himself in the role of mediator. He invited William to Windsor Castle for a private talk. Over tea, he praised his son's loyalty to Anne but reminded him that leadership required flexibility as well as firmness. Charles urged him to consider whether pressing the matter further would only deepen divisions. William listened respectfully, but the set of his jaw revealed his doubt. Though he valued his father's counsel, he remained unconvinced that silence was the right answer. In the weeks that followed, small efforts were made to mend the rift. Catherine extended warm invitations to Laura Gallery viewings, charity, dinners hoping to create opportunities for reconciliation. Anne, pragmatic as ever, attended events where Laura was present, showing no outward sign of grievance. But beneath the surface, the lines had already been drawn. William's cool distance lingered. Laura's pride kept her from offering the acknowledgement he sought. The public, of course, remained unaware. They saw only a royal family carrying out duties and presenting unity. But palace staff knew differently. Seating charts were carefully managed, schedules subtly altered, and events meticulously planned to prevent awkward encounters. The monarchy's polished face was maintained, but only at the cost of constant quiet. Adjustments behind the scenes, the deeper question was one of precedent. If Laura's casual remark could cause such disruption, what did it say about the fragile ties that held the family together? William's fierce loyalty to Anne revealed the strength of their bond. Camilla's defense of Laura showed the limits of blending two families into one. For Anne, it became another chapter in a lifetime defined by service and endurance where even her own family sometimes undervalued her. In the end, there was no dramatic resolution, no public apology, no moment of reconciliation. Instead, the conflict settled into an uneasy truce. William stayed close to Anne, his loyalty unshaken. Laura carried on with her art career, but knew her relationship with William would never fully mend. Camilla remained protective. Charles remained the peacemaker. And Anne carried on, as she always had. What had started as a passing remark had grown into something larger, not because of the words themselves, but because of what they represented: respect, loyalty, pride, and the fragile balance of a family forever under scrutiny. The cameras never caught it, but those inside the palace knew. One evening's careless comment had left a scar that would not easily fade. So what do you think? Was William right to hold Fermor? Should he have let it go, as Anne suggested? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more royal insights. The next video on your screen is one you won't want to miss.